Welcome back to Saharan Whisper. In today's episode, we bring you the tale of the Calabash of Whispers. Set in a drought-stricken village, this story follows Abini, a courageous young girl who discovers a magical calabash that seems to carry the voice of the earth itself. But as her secret spreads, greed and jealousy threaten to unravel the fragile bonds of her community. Can Abani learn to wield this newfound power wisely before it's too late? And now, let us begin. The sun bore down mercilessly on the village of Abadani, where the ground was cracked and barren, and the air was thick with the weight of despair. Once vibrant fields now lay desolate, the crops withered, and the villagers whispered in fear of what the future might hold. Aini, a 12-year-old girl with sharp eyes and a resolute spirit, stood at the edge of a dried riverbed. Her bare feet pressed into the brittle soil as she scanned the horizon, her heart heavy with determination. Her baby brother had cried himself to sleep the night before, his tiny body racked with thirst. Abani couldn't bear to hear those cries again. "I'll find water," she whispered to herself, brushing a curl from her sweat-streaked face. "There has to be some left." She knelt and began to dig into the earth with her hands, the dry soil crumbling beneath her fingers. After what felt like hours, her nails scraped against something hard. Frowning, she cleared away more dirt, revealing the smooth curve of a calabash, a gourd unlike any she had seen before. It was warm to the touch, its surface etched with intricate symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly in the sunlight. As Abani held it, she heard it, a soft, melodic whisper that sent a chill down her spine. Her breath caught. "What are you?" she murmured, leaning closer. The calabash pulsed gently in her hands, and a single word resonated in her mind, clear and commanding. "Listen." Abani sat cross-legged in the dry riverbed, her heart pounding as she cradled the calabash in her hands. Its whispers grew clearer, filling her mind with images, twisting roots, hidden streams, and deep, unseen pockets of water buried beneath the earth. This is real," she whispered, her voice trembling. The visions guided her toward a patch of earth beneath a dying baobab tree. She climbed out of the riverbed and followed the calabash's silent pull, her steps quick and sure. The grove was quiet, its once mighty trees now skeletal and weak. Abani knelt at the base of the oldest tree and began to dig again. Her hands worked tirelessly, the dry soil cutting into her fingers. Just as she was about to give up, her fingers brushed against something cool and damp. Gasping, she cleared away more dirt until a tiny trickle of water seeped to the surface. Abani laughed through her tears, cupping the water in her hands and bringing it to her lips. It was cool and clean, a taste she had almost forgotten. She quickly filled a small clay jar she had brought, covering the hole to keep the water clean and hidden. The calabash's whispers softened, as if approving of her actions. As Abani made her way back to the village, clutching the jar and the calabash tightly, she failed to notice the pair of eyes watching her from the shadows of a nearby tree. Omari, a wiry boy known for his mischief and envy, crouched low, his dark eyes following her every move. "What are you hiding, Abani?" he muttered to himself, a sly grin spreading across his face. Abani slipped quietly into her family's small hut, the jar of water clutched tightly in her hands. Her parents looked up in surprise as she entered. Her mother, who had been trying to soothe Abani's baby brother, set him down and rushed to her. "Abani, where have you been?" her mother asked, her voice a mixture of relief and worry. "I found something," Abani blurted, setting the jar on the table. "Look." Her father leaned forward, his brow furrowing as he inspected the jar. "Water?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's fresh," Abani said quickly. "I found it near the baobab grove. There's more if we dig carefully." Her mother dipped a finger into the jar and tasted the water. Her eyes widened with tears, and she pulled Abeni into a tight hug. "You've done something amazing, my girl," she whispered. Abeni's father remained cautious. "If this is true, you've saved us, but we have to keep this quiet. If the other villagers find out, they'll want to know where it came from. They might not listen to reason." Abeni nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of the secret. "I'll be careful," she promised. That night, for the first time in weeks, her family drank their fill. The baby slept peacefully, his soft breathing a balm to Abeni's weary heart. But across the village, Omari was already spinning his plans. He had seen the jar of water and the strange object Abeni had carried. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that she was hiding something valuable, something powerful. "If she found it, I can take it," he muttered, pacing the small room he shared with his siblings. The next morning, Omari intercepted Abeni as she headed toward the baobab grove. His grin was wide, but his eyes were sharp. "Good morning, Abeni," he said, falling into step beside her. Abeni stiffened. "What do you want, Omari?" "Oh, nothing much," he said casually. "I just couldn't help but notice you sneaking around last night. You found something, didn't you?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Abeni said, quickening her pace. Omari laughed. "You're a terrible liar. Whatever it is, the rest of us deserve to know about it. Don't think you can keep it all to yourself." "I'm not keeping anything," Abeni snapped, stopping abruptly to face him. Omari smirked. "We'll see about that." As he walked away, Abeni felt a shiver run down her spine. Omari wasn't going to let this go, and she knew it. Abeni hurried to the baobab grove, her heart pounding with frustration and fear. Omari's curiosity wasn't just an annoyance, it was dangerous. She clutched the calabash tightly, its faint whispers a reminder of the fragile balance she was trying to protect. At the grove, she uncovered the small pool of water she had hidden the day before. The trickle was steady, enough to refill her clay jar and keep her family safe for a few more days. But it wasn't enough for the entire village. The Calabash's whispers urged her onward, guiding her deeper into the visions of underground water sources waiting to be uncovered. "This can work," she whispered to herself, "but only if we're careful." As she worked to cover the pool again, a rustling noise made her freeze. She turned sharply, scanning the grove. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling slightly. The grove was silent, save for the wind rustling through the brittle leaves. Abeni's grip on the calabash tightened. She couldn't let anyone discover the water, not yet. Back in the village, Omari was already stirring trouble. He gathered a small group of villagers near the dried-out well, his voice loud and confident. "I saw her," he said, pointing toward the direction of the baobab grove. "Abeni's been sneaking around, hiding something. I think she's found water, and she's keeping it for herself." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, their faces etched with desperation. "Why would she do that?" one woman asked, doubt lacing her voice. "Because she doesn't trust us," Omari said, shrugging. "She wants it all for herself, and she doesn't care if the rest of us suffer." "She's just a child," an older man muttered. "Why should we believe you?" Omari smirked. "You don't have to believe me, but if you're willing to sit back and let her keep secrets, don't blame me when your families go thirsty." His words struck a nerve, and the villagers murmured among themselves. A few of them nodded reluctantly, and one finally spoke up. "We'll talk to her. If she's hiding something, she'll have to explain herself." Abeni returned to the village as the sun dipped low on the horizon, her clay jar filled with fresh water. But as she approached her family's hut, she saw a crowd gathered outside. Her heart sank. Omari stood at the center, arms crossed, a triumphant smirk on his face. "There she is," he said loudly. "Abeni, Tell us the truth. What are you hiding?" Her parents stepped out of the hut, worry etched on their faces. Abani hesitated, clutching the jar and the calabash protectively. "I'm not hiding anything," she said firmly, though her voice wavered. "Then what's in the jar?" Omari pressed. Abani's knuckles whitened as the crowd murmured in suspicion. She had known this moment was coming, but she wasn't ready. "I can explain," she began, her voice trembling. "You'd better," Omari interrupted, stepping closer. "Because if you don't, we'll find out the truth ourselves." The villagers waited, their desperation palpable. Abani's grip on the calabash tightened as she prepared to defend the fragile secret she had worked so hard to protect. Abani's heart raced as the villagers surrounded her, their eyes filled with equal parts desperation and suspicion. Omari smirked triumphantly, his arms crossed as he waited for her to falter. Her father stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Leave her alone. She's just a child. If she says she's not hiding anything, we should trust her." "Trust?" Omari scoffed, turning to the crowd. "We've been dying for months, and she suddenly shows up with a jar of water. Do you really believe there's nothing more to this?" The murmurs of agreement sent a chill down Abani's spine. She glanced at her mother, who gave her a small, encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, Abani stepped forward, clutching the calabash. "I found water," she admitted, her voice steady despite her fear. "But it's not enough for everyone yet. The earth only gives what it can spare, and we have to be careful." The villagers gasped, their suspicion momentarily replaced by hope. "You found water?" one woman asked, stepping closer. "Where?" Abani hesitated, glancing at Omari's smug expression. "I can't show you yet," she said cautiously. "If we take too much too quickly, it'll dry up, just like everything else." Omari seized the moment. "Convenient, isn't it? She's still trying to keep it for herself." "That's not true," Abani snapped, her frustration boiling over. "I'm trying to protect it, for all of us." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, torn between their trust in Abani and Omari's insistent accusations. An elder woman stepped forward, her frail hands trembling as she raised them for silence. "Child," she said, her voice gentle but commanding. "If what you're saying is true, then you must prove it. Show us this water you found. If you speak the truth, we will listen." Abani's chest tightened, the weight of the calabash in her arms growing heavier. She looked around at the faces of her neighbors, their hope teetering on the edge of doubt. Finally, she nodded. "Come with me," she said quietly. The villagers followed Abani to the baobab grove, the tension thick in the air. Omari walked at the front, his steps confident, as if already anticipating her failure. When they reached the grove, Abani knelt by the base of the ancient tree. Her hands moved quickly, uncovering the small pool of water she had hidden. The villagers gasped as the glimmering liquid came into view. "It's real," someone whispered in awe. Abani straightened, her voice steady. "This is what the calabash showed me. There's more water beneath the ground, but we have to dig carefully. If we're greedy, we'll lose it all." The villagers stared at the pool, their expressions shifting from disbelief to wonder. But Omari stepped forward, his lips curling into a sneer. "And what about that?" he said, pointing to the calabash. "Is that your little secret?" Abani instinctively clutched it tighter. "It helps me listen to the earth. Without it, I wouldn't have found the water." "Or maybe it's the reason for the drought in the first place," Omari said, his voice dripping with accusation. "Magic like that always comes with a price." Fear rippled through the villagers, their awe replaced by unease. "No," Abani said fiercely. "The calabash isn't a curse, it's a gift. But if you misuse it, it can destroy everything. Omari took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. Then maybe it's too dangerous for you to keep. The tension snapped, and the crowd erupted into a chaotic mix of voices. Abeni stood her ground, her heart pounding as she prepared to defend the calabash and the hope it represented. The voices of the villagers swirled around Abeni, a cacophony of fear, desperation, and anger. Omari stepped closer, his hand outstretched. "Give it to me, Abeni," he demanded. "If this calabash is as powerful as you say, it shouldn't belong to just one person." "No," Abeni said, her voice rising above the crowd's murmurs. She clutched the calabash tightly, her heart pounding. "The calabash doesn't belong to me, or anyone. It belongs to the earth. If we don't respect it, we'll lose everything." The villagers hesitated, her words cutting through their frenzy. The elder woman stepped forward again, raising her hands to quiet the crowd. "Abeni has shown us water," she said firmly. "Whatever this calabash may be, it brought us hope when we had none. If we turn on each other now, we'll destroy ourselves before the drought ever can." The crowd murmured in agreement, their anger giving way to shame. Omari, however, wasn't convinced. "You're all fools," he spat. "She's just a child. She doesn't know what she's doing. That thing is dangerous." Abeni turned to him, her voice calm but resolute. "You're afraid, Omari, but fear won't save this village. We have to work together, or everything will be lost." Omari glared at her, but said nothing. He stepped back, his fists clenched, and the crowd began to disperse. That evening, Abeni sat by the baobab grove, the calabash resting in her lap. Its whispers were faint but steady, guiding her thoughts. "You're right," she murmured to it. "I have to show them the truth." Her parents approached, their expressions weary but proud. "You did well today," her father said, sitting beside her. "But this isn't over, is it?" Abeni shook her head. "The calabash is still showing me where to find more water. There's a bigger source near the eastern hills. I need to go there, but I can't do it alone." Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "We'll help you. The villagers will listen if we lead by example." Abeni smiled, relief washing over her. "Thank you." The next morning, the villagers gathered again, this time with a renewed sense of purpose. Under Abeni's guidance, they worked together to dig deeper near the baobab grove, uncovering a stronger stream that fed into a small reservoir. "It's enough for now," Abeni said, her voice hopeful but cautious. "But there's more water farther out. If we dig carefully, we can bring it here without overusing what we've already found." The villagers nodded, their faith in her growing. Even Omari remained silent, though his eyes followed the calabash with suspicion. But as night fell, Omari's doubts festered. While the village slept, he crept toward the grove, his mind racing with plans. "If she won't let it go, I'll have to take it," he muttered, his footsteps silent against the soft earth. He reached the baobab grove, where the calabash rested on a flat stone near the pool. Omari's hand trembled as he reached for it. But the moment his fingers touched the calabash, a blinding light erupted and the ground beneath him began to tremble. Omari stumbled back, his heart pounding as the earth seemed to come alive. A voice echoed in his mind, deep and resonant. "Greed will destroy you." Terrified, he fled into the night, leaving the calabash untouched. Abeni awoke to the sound of distant rumbling. She rushed to the grove, the calabash already humming in her arms. When she arrived, she found the ground cracked and disturbed, the pool shimmering faintly in the moonlight. Her parents joined her moments later, their faces etched with worry. "What happened?" her father asked. "I don't know," Abeni said, her voice trembling. But deep down, she feared she already knew. The next morning, whispers rippled through the village as the story of the strange rumbling spread. The villagers gathered by the baobab grove, where the cracks in the earth seemed to radiate outward from the pool. The water was still flowing, but it was weaker now, the stream reduced to a sluggish trickle. Abini stood at the edge of the grove, the calabash in her hands. The whispers inside it were louder, more urgent than ever. She felt their warning deep in her chest, a steady drumbeat of tension. "We can't ignore this," she said, addressing the crowd. "The earth is warning us. If we keep taking more than it can give, the water will disappear." Her words were met with a murmur of agreement from some, but others looked uneasy. Omari stood at the back of the group, his face pale but his expression hard. "This is because of the calabash," he said, his voice loud and sharp. "It's too powerful. We were fine before it showed up." Abini turned to him, anger flashing in her eyes. "We weren't fine. The crops were dying, and so were we. The calabash didn't cause the drought. It helped us survive it." The villagers exchanged uncertain glances, torn between Abini's conviction and Omari's accusations. The elder woman stepped forward, raising her hand for silence. "The calabash has given us water," she said, her voice steady. "But we must decide how to use it wisely. Abini, if the water near the baobab grove is running low, what do you propose we do?" Abini took a deep breath, clutching the calabash tightly. "There's a larger source of water near the eastern hills. The calabash has shown me where it is. If we dig carefully, we can redirect it to the village without depleting it." The villagers murmured in surprise, their hope rekindled. "Then we should go," a man said, stepping forward. "If the calabash can guide us, we have no choice but to trust it." Abini nodded. "I'll lead the way. But we have to move quickly. The earth won't wait for us." The journey to the eastern hills was long and grueling, the villagers working together to carry tools and supplies. Abini walked at the front, her parents close behind, the calabash whispering its guidance with every step. Omari trailed at the back, his expression unreadable. Though he said little, his presence weighed heavily on Abini's mind. When they reached the hills, the calabash's whispers grew louder, guiding Abini to a specific patch of dry, cracked earth. She knelt and pressed her hands to the ground, her fingers trembling as the visions filled her mind. "There's water here," she said, her voice steady. "We need to dig carefully. The source is deep, but it's strong. If we work together, we can bring it back to the village." The villagers immediately set to work, their desperation driving them. The sun beat down on their backs, but their determination never wavered. Hours later, the first glimmer of water appeared. Cheers erupted as the stream grew, bubbling to the surface and flowing into the channels they had dug. "We did it!" someone shouted, their voice filled with joy. Abini smiled, relief washing over her. But as she held the calabash, its whispers shifted, turning darker. She glanced toward Omari, who stood apart from the others, his gaze fixed on the water. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the danger wasn't over. The villagers celebrated late into the evening, their spirits lifted by the sight of water flowing freely from the earth. For the first time in months, their laughter echoed across the hills, and hope seemed to replace the fear and desperation that had gripped them for so long. But Abini couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. She stood near the new stream, the calabash humming faintly in her hands. Its whispers were no longer guiding, they were warning. Her father approached, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You've done something incredible," he said softly. "Look at them. They believe again, because of you." Abini smiled faintly, but her grip on the calabash tightened. "It's not just me," she said. "The calabash has shown us the way, but it's also warning me. If we're not careful, all of this could disappear." Her father frowned, his expression growing serious. "What do you mean?" "The earth gives, but it won't forgive greed," Abini said, her voice low. "If we take too much, we'll lose everything." Her father nodded. "Then we'll make sure they understand. We'll protect what we've built together." As the villagers began to gather their tools and prepare to return to the village, Abini noticed Omari lingering by the stream. His expression was dark, his eyes fixed on the water. She approached cautiously. "Omari?" she said, her voice steady. He didn't turn to look at her. "This is just the beginning," he muttered, his tone cold. "What do you mean?" He finally turned, his gaze sharp and full of resentment. "You think this is enough? A little trickle of water? It won't save everyone, Abani. The drought will come back, and we'll be right where we started." "That's why we have to be careful," she said. "We have to share and protect what we have."
Omari scoffed. "You're naive. Careful doesn't save people. Power does. And that calabash?" He pointed at the object in her hands. "That's power. You shouldn't be the one holding it." Abini took a step back, clutching the calabash tighter. "It's not about power. It's about listening to the earth. If we try to control it, we'll destroy everything." Omari's lips curled into a bitter smile. "We'll see about that." That night, as the villagers returned to their homes, Abini sat outside her family's hut, the calabash resting in her lap. The whispers were soft but relentless, filling her with a sense of urgency she couldn't ignore. Her mother joined her, sitting quietly by her side. "What's on your mind, Abini?" "Omari," Abini admitted. "He doesn't understand. He thinks the calabash is about power, and I'm afraid of what he'll do." Her mother sighed. "Not everyone sees the world the way you do. But you've shown the village what's possible. They'll stand by you if he tries to cause trouble." Abini nodded, but the uneasy feeling remained. In the darkness, Omari crept toward the grove where the calabash had guided them. The stream glittered faintly in the moonlight, its sound a soft, soothing trickle. But Omari's eyes were fixed on the calabash itself, which rested on a flat stone near the water's edge. "This should be mine," he whispered to himself, stepping closer. "If she won't use it properly, I will." He reached out, his hand trembling with anticipation. The moment his fingers touched the calabash, a deafening hum filled the air, and the ground beneath him began to shake. Omari stumbled back, his heart racing as cracks formed in the earth, the stream bubbling violently. A voice echoed in his mind, cold and final. "The earth will protect itself." Terrified, Omari fled into the night, leaving the calabash undisturbed. The next morning, the village woke to chaos. The stream near the eastern hills had overflowed during the night, creating a shallow flood that seeped into the surrounding fields. The water, once a source of hope, now carried with it a warning. Abini was already at the grove when the first villagers arrived. She stood by the stream, her heart heavy as she surveyed the damage. The calabash rested in her arms, its whispers urgent and unrelenting. "What happened?" a man called out, his voice tinged with fear. "I don't know," Abini said, though deep down, she suspected the truth. The earth had reacted to Omari's greed, and now the delicate balance was in danger of collapsing. The villagers gathered around her, their voices rising in panic. "We've lost control of the water," one woman cried. "This is why we can't rely on magic," another shouted, glaring at the calabash. The elder woman stepped forward, raising her hands for silence. "Enough," she said firmly. Abini has led us this far. Let her speak. Abini took a deep breath, her grip on the calabash tightening. The earth is warning us, she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. We're taking too much, too quickly. The calabash shows us what's possible, but it can't do everything for us. We have to respect the balance, or we'll lose everything. Her words silenced the crowd, but the tension remained palpable. Omari, who had been standing at the edge of the group, stepped forward. His face was pale, and his eyes darted nervously. "She's lying," he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "The calabash is dangerous. It's causing all of this." "It's not the calabash," Abini said sharply, turning to face him. "It's us. Our actions decide what happens. If we work together and respect what we have, the earth will provide. But if we give in to greed, we'll destroy everything." The villagers murmured among themselves, their faith in Abini wavering. As the crowd dispersed to assess the damage, Abini's parents approached her, their faces filled with concern. "This is getting worse," her mother said softly. "What can we do?" Abini glanced down at the calabash, its whispers filling her mind with images of roots stretching deep into the earth, reaching for hidden reservoirs. "There's more water beneath us," she said. "But we need to dig carefully and protect what we find. The calabash is showing me how, but the villagers have to trust me." Her father nodded. "We'll stand with you. The others will see the truth if we lead by example." That night, Abini sat alone by the stream, the calabash glowing faintly in the moonlight. The earth beneath her felt alive, pulsing with a rhythm she could almost hear. She closed her eyes, pressing her hands to the calabash. Its whispers grew louder, filling her mind with images of unity and destruction, of abundance and loss. The choice was clear, but the path was fragile. A shadow moved behind her, and Abini turned sharply. Omari stepped into the light, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he said, his voice low. Abini studied him, her heart softening despite her anger. "Then help me fix it," she said. "We can't keep fighting, Omari. If we don't work together, we'll lose everything." Omari hesitated, his gaze shifting to the calabash. "You trust that thing too much," he muttered. "I trust the earth," Abini said firmly. "And I trust that we can do better if we try." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Omari nodded reluctantly. "What do we do?" As dawn broke, Abani and Omari worked side by side to reinforce the stream and redirect the flow to prevent further flooding. The villagers joined them one by one, their efforts turning chaos into order. The calabash remained silent, its whispers fading into the background as the village found its balance once more. But Abani knew their journey wasn't over. The earth had tested them, and while they had passed for now, the true challenge was learning to protect what they had built, for themselves and for future generations. The village of Abadani woke to a day of calm. The water from the eastern hills now flowed steadily, its channels carefully managed by the villagers. The fields, once barren, showed the first signs of life as green shoots pushed through the soil. Abani stood at the edge of the grove, the calabash cradled in her arms. Its whispers had faded into a gentle hum, a sound that filled her with both relief and resolve. The earth had given them another chance, but she knew the balance was delicate. The villagers gathered in the square that morning, their faces marked by both exhaustion and hope. The elder woman stepped forward, her eyes scanning the crowd before resting on Abani. "We owe our survival to this child," the elder said, her voice steady. "Abani has shown us the way, and the calabash has guided her. But now it is up to all of us to protect what we've been given. The villagers murmured in agreement, their gazes turning toward Abini. Stepping forward, Abini held the calabash high. "The earth has shown us its power and its mercy," she said, her voice strong. "This calabash isn't mine. It belongs to all of us. But we must remember that its power comes with responsibility. If we let greed and fear take over, we'll lose everything." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, she felt the full weight of the villagers' trust. Even Omari, standing near the back of the crowd, lowered his gaze in acknowledgement. In the days that followed, the village transformed. Guided by Abini's visions and the Calabash's whispers, they built a network of irrigation channels that connected the water sources to the fields. The villagers worked together, their unity growing stronger with each passing day. Omari, once a source of division, became one of the most dedicated workers. Though he rarely spoke to Abini, his actions showed his commitment to the village's survival. As the rains finally returned to Abadani, the once parched land came alive with vibrant greenery. The villagers gathered to celebrate, their laughter and music filling the air. Abini watched from the edge of the square, the calabash resting quietly in her hands. Her parents stood beside her, their faces glowing with pride. "You've done something incredible, Abini," her father said. "We all did," Abini replied, her voice soft. That night, as the stars glittered overhead, Abini returned to the baobab grove. She knelt by the stream, the calabash glowing faintly in the moonlight. Placing it gently on the ground, she whispered, "Thank you." The calabash pulsed once, as if in acknowledgement, before its light dimmed and its whispers ceased. Abini stood and walked away, leaving the calabash in the grove, a symbol of the bond between the village and the earth. Abadani had found hope, not just in the calabash, but in each other. And Abani knew that as long as they honored the earth's gifts, they would endure. Thank you for joining us for the Calabash of Whispers. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to Saharan Whisper and hit the notification bell so you never miss another tale of mystery, magic, and wisdom. Until next time, may the whispers of the earth guide you.